Okay, so here we are, episode number 3 of the Russia-Ukraine war. Just how did this shit show get started? There are a number of points I'm trying to drive home through this awesome article. Number 1, who started the war? The answer, Ukraine started the war. And when I say Ukraine, what I'm really saying is a bunch of DC Democrats that lack the common sensibility to read a clock without numbers on it. And of course a bunch of war-porn hungry rhinos hell-bent on winning a decades-old war for the betterment of not one single tax-paying American citizen. Was the Russian invasion a violation of international law? Answer, no. Amazingly, the Russian invasion should be approved or justified under United Nations Article 51. Could this war have been avoided if Ukraine declared neutrality and met Putin's reasonable demands? The answer is a definite yes. The war could have been avoided easily, but the instigations and no doubt manipulations behind the scenes from Washington, D.C. set the scene for things to play out exactly as planned. Okay, so the last point deals with the Minsk Treaty and how the dishonesty of Western leaders is going to affect the final settlement in Ukraine. I am convinced that neither Washington, D.C. nor the NATO allies have any idea of how severely international relations have been decimated by the Minsk betrayal. In a world where legally binding agreements can be casually discarded in the name of political convenience, the only way to settle disputes is through brute force. Did anyone in Germany, France, or Washington think about this before they acted? But before we dive into that question, let's do a little bit of background discussion on these Minsk agreements. The aim of the Minsk agreement was to end the fighting between the Ukrainian army and ethnic Russians in the Donbas region of Ukraine. It was the responsibility of the 4 participants in the treaty, Germany, France, Russia, and Ukraine, to ensure that both sides followed the terms of the deal. But in December, former German Chancellor Angela Merkel said in an interview with a German magazine that there was never any intention of implementing the deal. Instead, the plan was to use the time to make Ukraine stronger in order to prepare for a war with Russia. So once again, clearly, from the very beginning, the United States intended to provoke a war with Russia. On September 5, 2014, Germany, France, Ukraine, and Russia all signed Minsk, but the treaty failed and the fighting resumed. On February 12, 2015, Minsk II was signed, but that failed as well. Here's a brief rundown of Minsk transcribed from a Amit Sengupta video somewhere on YouTube. In 2015, Germany and France were supposed to play a neutral role. They were supposed to make Ukraine and Russia follow the rules, but they didn't do that. And the reason they didn't do that is what Angela Merkel revealed in her interview on December 7th. Merkel said, quote, "The 2014 Minsk agreement was an attempt to give time to Ukraine. It also gave time to become stronger, as can be seen today. The Ukraine of 2014 and 15 is not the modern Ukraine," unquote. Basically, all 3 partners of the Minsk agreement lied and betrayed Russia. Even Putin said, quote, "One day Russia will have to reach an agreement with Ukraine, but Germany and France betrayed Russia, and now they are helping Ukraine with weapons," unquote. It's a shame that Western political leaders engage in negotiations that they do not intend to honor or enforce. Ukraine President Petro Poroshenko has admitted the same as Merkel and Holland. Now even Putin has acknowledged that it was a mistake to agree to the Minsk Accords. He even said that the Donbas problem should have been resolved by force of arms at the time. Russia waited 8 years to recognize Donbass's independence and then launched a full-scale attack. But then Putin was under the impression that the Minsk Accords, guaranteed by Germany and France and endorsed unanimously by the UN Security Council, including the United States, would resolve the crisis and would give the Donbass autonomy while remaining part of the Ukraine. Germany and France were supposed to make sure the Minsk Accords were implemented from 2015 to 2022. The collective West always knew that war was the only solution. They never wanted peace. They just played along in the name of the Minsk agreements. So you can see, it is a diplomatic win for the West. France and Germany appeased Russia with the Minsk agreement and gave false hope of a peaceful solution. But in reality, They were buying time for Ukraine to build its military. There was never a diplomatic solution. The collective West, which includes the United States, NATO, the European Union, and G7, fooled Russia into believing there was a diplomatic solution to the Donbass conflict. But instead, they were preparing Ukraine for a full-fledged war against Russia. So you see, either way, the war was meant to happen. There was never going to be a diplomatic solution. This is what Angela Merkel wanted to convey. Quote, "The Cold War never ended." She was the German chancellor when the coup took place in Ukraine in 2014, and the Minsk Accords were signed. Therefore, her contribution to this duplicitous game, along with Germany, France, Ukraine, and the US, has led to this war, and she very well knows it. But either way, it is not going to end well for Germany and France, whose economies have been badly hurt. Basically, Ukraine has been completely destroyed at this point. It has become the Afghanistan of Europe. It is the Western political leaders that are guilty of the murder of Ukraine. As it has been since 2014, the Ukrainian government has been launching vicious military attacks against Russian-speaking Ukrainian civilians in the Donbass region. Thousands of Russian-speaking civilians have been killed. The reality is that Russia should have taken back the territory in 2014 along with Crimea. But then, Russia fell into the trap of the Western countries' Minsk Agreement. It is not Russia that started this war, it is the United States that started this war. Ukraine is just a pawn that is supported by the United States and the other European governments. And of course, it is a pity that the Ukrainian government serves the interest of the United States and not of its own Ukrainian people. I'm going to repeat myself because it is so damn necessary. There's no way to overstate the importance of the Minsk betrayal or the impact it's going to have on the final settlement in Ukraine. When trust is lost, nations can only ensure their security through brute force. What that means is that Russia must expand its perimeter as far as is necessary to ensure that it will remain beyond the enemy's range of fire. And old Putin, Lavrov, and Medvedev have already indicated that they plan to do just that. Now, the new perimeter must be permanently fortified with combat troops and lethal weaponry that are kept on a hair-trigger alert. Now, in closing, when treaties become vehicles of political opportunism, the nations must accept a permanent state of war. This is the world that Merkel, Holland, and Poroshenko, and of course the United States created by opting to use the cornerstone of international relations. They're called treaties, to advance their own narrow warmongering objectives. At the end of the day, I just wonder if anyone in DC is smart enough to realize what the fuck they have done. Most of this came by way of Zero Hedge. If you liked it, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment down below. There's a PayPal link in the description box, so please put $1 in the bucket on the way out the door. I'd like to thank everyone for all your donations. They're much needed and much appreciated. Now, with all that being said, we'll see you next time.
Come on, move. Move. Easy, easy.